You see, Sri Ramakrishna explains it in this way, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. Water is water, regardless of whether it is viewed in solid ice or whether it is in steam, whether it is vaporized or whether it is condensed. Water is a substance, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. But its form can change. So if you view it as ice and iceberg, is it different from that of vapor? No. But is it seen to be different? Yes. Now, water can represent for us a formless state. Formless in the sense that it transcends form, just as a representation. Even if I say that the ocean represents formless, you see how difficult it is to conceive a formless. In fact, not just difficult, it's impossible. We only think in concepts of form and shape, that is, the things that we know of. When we explore new territory, then we are now going beyond conception and beyond words. That is why the great mystics and saints and teachers who try to convey the experience of direct perception, where nearness even becomes oneness, and there are no two things. Now, we are not used to anything that has no individuality. The nearest we can do is we can make representations. The blue sky, the vast ocean. But these are merely concepts. In the formless kind of meditation, that is, in the non-dualistic kind of meditation, jnana meditation, we find that we have to visualize either something like air or ocean or sky or space or something, one of these concepts. So it's still a form. Swami Vivekananda used to argue, you see, the Muslims say, no, we have no form. The form is idolatry. All right. But then you see, when you say Allah, and Allah has over 900 names, different names. So don't tell me that you don't conceive of Allah differently. These names represent different qualities. Same thing if you look at the Vedas, by the way. If you take, for example, Shiva. Shiva is a name of Rudra. So it's simply one who is auspicious. Some of these adjectives come through and become nouns for us. And there we make a mistake. If I say, you're a good person, and we shorten it to good, and then we come to God, then you have now a different name, a different concept, and everyone is saying, oh, the Swami says you're God. So in Ramakrishna's example of water, what he's saying, he's using the example of the ocean formed because of certain temperatures into ice. An iceberg is there. Because out of love for us, out of love for the devotee, constructs a form of himself for you and me. And all these forms come from the depths of meditation. I give you an example of Shiva. It's an example I often give. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand. Some sage looking at a mountain a distance in the Himalayas, seeing how it's snow-capped, inspiring the person to the quality of strength and solidity, seeing how tall the mountain is, indicating a certain transcendence, allowing me to feel a sense of awe and wonder. And is this not auspicious? And then as I close my eyes, I see, I want to be close to you. The mountain is at a distance. How can I connect with you if you're a symbol of this indescribable, ineffable entity? And so immediately what comes to my mind is some eyes, some long hair, understanding that melted snow coming from the mountains develops into a river. I see there, oh, there is the Ganga flowing from here. There is the mountain seated like a triangle. And it's blue in the distance. And I see it's all snow in the distance. And then let me see what is involved in this nature. Three evolutionary forces are involved in nature. So let me put this as a trident, because all gods and goddesses will have to have weapons to protect me and to chase away evil, and maybe to prod me a little bit when I'm lazy. Put a little humor in there. So we can see there Shiva as the mountain. Is it an accident, therefore, that the symbol of Shiva is Mount Kailash? He sits on the top. Is it an accident that spontaneously we understand not being able to conceive of this ultimate in a specific anthropomorphic form necessarily? For those who don't want an anthropomorphic form, you have a linga. Linga means a sign. A sign, therefore, representing Mount Kailash. And Lake Manasava below, representing its receptacle below, and so on. All of these. So that when the meditator comes and wants to try to put some shape, some kind of relationship and connection, then what that entity does is uses what these sages described and put in symbols, appropriate for people who may understand it. A good teacher will teach different people different things, not contradictory, because we have different approaches, different tendencies, different propensities, different likes, different dislikes. So, using that symbol, we can then see, Lord, there you are. Because a symbol is a linga, it's a sign. Like any signpost is, look, please look here. The idea of a linga has developed because two children, one male, one female, sitting in a bath of water, how will you tell which is male, which is female? A sign has to be there, a lingam. And so we develop this and understand, a lingam, something that shows us there's a difference somewhere. And then missionaries come along from Christian countries and say, phallic symbol. And then the Hindus say, well, your church spire is a phallic symbol. And so it goes on like that, degrading the whole concept, not understanding fully what it all means. So we can put it like this. The Lord who covers everything, according to Ishopanishad, who covers everything, pervades everything everywhere, that entity coming down, coming away from the transcendence aspect of the Vedanta, which we call Advaita, decides to bring us down to a fundamental level where we understand the relationship between God and the world. The first verse of the Ishopanishad tells us this relationship between God and the world. A very beautiful statement. And what I mentioned also was, Mahatma Gandhi said, if all the scriptures disappear, if we lose all the Vedas, all the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Puranas, Bible, Quran, everything gone, but we retain this one verse, this one stanza, we would have understood everything there is to know. But this stanza is not a non-dualistic stanza. Don't forget the whole purpose, the whole thrust and message of the Upanishads is to teach us about Brahman. And when we say Brahman, we're talking immediately of the entity that is transcending. But mystics such as Ramakrishna will say, there is no difference between this Brahman and this Kali. That is the one with form, and the one that transcends form is one and the same, but we are seeing it in different ways. We cannot see Brahman. Brahman is unknowable. But yet, we find in other places, Brahman is knowable. Is this a contradiction? No, it's not a contradiction. Brahman is unknowable through the senses. Brahman is unknowable in the same way that we know a table or a chair or any other object. We can't say Brahman is like that. Can't squeeze him into a test tube. See, is he acid or alkaline? And I always tell the story, so ad nauseum I tell it, so people who understand, again and again. You see, way back, before you were all born, no doubt, the first cosmonaut was sent from the Soviet Union into space, what is now Russia. And then, of course, at that time, Soviet Union was purely an atheistic state. Its ideology was atheistic. And the man in charge, Khrushchev, he declared, the chairman, he declared, I told you all there's no God. Our cosmonaut went up, Yuri Gagarin. Our cosmonaut went up into space. He looked left and right, up and down. He never saw this old man with a beard. He never saw God. Therefore, this is conclusive evidence. It doesn't exist. Very often today, we align modern science and atheism. But there's no relationship, because what modern science or any science, whether it's modern or otherwise, is studying, they're studying Maya. They're studying the fragmented version of what is actually there. It doesn't look like it. Because it doesn't look like it, we can't necessarily approach it in this way. When you study the Upanishads, you'll find they gradingly, step by step, progressively take you from your assumed position to the actual position of truth. You have to take somebody by the hand and lead them gently on. First position, we cannot even conceive of anything that has no form. And if you try, then you'll engage in atheistic arguments, because the atheist says we can't see God. Therefore, God cannot exist. We find some other explanation. But then the explanation becomes much more complicated. It becomes a patchwork explanation. So if you think that there's no origin or source, then where do you think everything came from? Assuming you believe that there was an origin somewhere, what is the origin? Well, science may tell you in time. We give you a promissory note in the future. You give the answer in the future. No doubt science will find it out. Well, that's not really a very satisfactory answer. It's a much more satisfactory answer to say that what is changing and evolving over time seems like a progression. And a progression seems like that there was a starting point, but you cannot have a change or series of changes without that same thing being involved in the change and being part and parcel of the change. In the philosophical language, we call it being the efficient and material cause. What we call Brahman is both the material and efficient cause. So we start off from a starting point, God has form. This is the easiest and best, particularly if you evoke the heart. It's not a new concept to say that for this modern age of Kali Yuga, you require a God with form, a yearning for God, where you form a relationship with that God. And you deepen that relationship. And you deepen it to the extent that, using the example of human love, the two become one. In almost every marriage ceremony I know of, whether it's Hindu or Christian or Jewish, the idea is that the two become one. So when the two became one, the two were originally separate, and then they became one unit. So it's easy for us to understand that relationship can result in a unity of the heart. With these basic concepts, in other words, with concepts of beauty, concepts that involve or can involve the imagination, art, drama, that can involve poetry, that can involve music and singing, that can involve some kinesthetic activities, using all the senses as much as possible, as vividly as possible, as creative as possible, saying, I believe in God with form, but I don't believe that the form I believe in is different or separate from the form you believe in, no more than I think that Malabika is exclusively a mother. and not a daughter. Mother and daughter, and maybe sister, and maybe grandchild, and maybe a university lecturer. And different roles are being played. Then behind this is a philosophy that says, why is there a universe at all? Why should there be something like this? And when we study it carefully, we'll see that it is a kind of drama being played out. And philosophy descends again to the imagination, as it were, and where our creativity can bloom. And there it shows us some visual concepts of this, such as Lord of the Dance, or such as a Krishna playing with companions. So there are many different concepts are there. So we don't relegate the idea of form, because if we say that God is without form, then what we're doing is two things. We're putting this God at a distance, an irreconcilable distance, number one. Number two, we're denying the next step. The next step is a philosophical position that tells us every form is his. And then when we get to that step, it's very natural progression to, formless, because we can now use the simile of an ocean, where every wave looks different, but there's only one ocean. But still there's a formless version of it, which has an amorphous form. What is the form of water? Whatever shape you put the water into. You put the water into a cup, then the water has the shape of the cup. But our real experience, when we examine it correctly, is a unity. And the closer we get to the unity, the closer we get to the truth. So we go from a fragmented condition to a condition of unity. Let me give you an example. I suppose you all heard of Gulliver's Travels. So Gulliver's Travels, supposing there's a giant person called Gulliver, and he stands in an ocean. He's so huge, he's a colossus. To the extent that when he wriggles his toes in the water of the ocean, he can feel every crevice of the ocean floor. Now, how many continents are there? I can take an unmuted answer. How many continents are there? Let's test your geographic knowledge.
7.
Okay. Stuart says 5, or he's just saying hi, and Malabika says 7. All right, fine. So 7, let me see. What have we? We've got South America, North America, we've got Europe, we've got Australia, we've got Antarctica,
Asia.
Asia, and we've got Africa.
Yeah.
All right. 7. I don't know which continents she left out, but they're not happy about it. Anyhow, so 7 continents are there. From Gulliver's point of view, how many continents are there?
One,
Yes.
probably.
There's one piece of land.
Yes.
When he stands in the sea, and the sea is up to his ankles, and he looks across and sees land here, land there, land there, he's only seeing one chunk of land, not seeing 7 different continents. What's our point of view? 7 different continents. And we're only looking at that in an abstract way. When we visit each continent, then it becomes more of a real thing. And we can't see them all simultaneously. So what is the truth? You see, it depends where you literally stand, using this example. You stand in varying positions, you'll get a different perspective. And then when you stand in a position of unity, it doesn't deny the other things. It says that from one perspective, then there are 7 continents. From another perspective, there's only one piece of land. So in the same way, we take many different positions. The danger of taking one position only is to become fanatically adamant. And then that means in the name of love and God, you start killing people. arguing with them first, of course, and then wishing that they were not in your presence, and then secretly thinking that you might, if you had the opportunity, stab them. On a national basis, it's called war. On an international basis, it's called world war. So man is still struggling with his sense of individuality and this fragmentation. And the way out is for him to entrench this feeling of love of God. It's the easiest way. Don't think it's a new idea. It's contained there in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And in describing to a group yesterday about this Bhagavad Gita, I was telling them how, if you want to study it, there are various ways. One way is to understand how these texts are being written. All these texts are written, and the sutra literature is written in the same way, by presenting the subject matter up front, all of it. This is what is going to be told. And then that's the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. First chapter is presenting a scenario. Second chapter is telling us all the solutions. And the whole content of the Bhagavad Gita is contained there. 18th chapter is to tell a summary. This is what was told. And so in the ancient days, they knew the art that people learn today of public speaking. Tell people what you're going to say, then say it, then tell them what you said. And I heard a funny story about somebody said, a speaker, good speaker, how long will you speak? And he said, I'll speak for 30 minutes. Fine. He went on for an hour and a half. And afterwards, I thought you said only 30 minutes. Oh, yes, I did. You see, the first 30 minutes was what I was going to say. Then the actual 30 minutes was what I had to say. And the remaining 30 minutes was a summary. This is what I said. So this structure is very useful. We use it anyway to present knowledge to others in teaching and so on. So present an overview first, helicopter view, general view. Then present what the content is, and then how it is at the end. It's not to say that in between has no value, it has all the value, because it tells you in detail now what is the message, what are the principles, and what are the practices. So in the same way, we start off with a human view. And in this Bhagavad Gita, therefore, we find that the whole 18 chapters are divided threefold. Well, generally, really the first 6 chapters, first 5 chapters, really. First 5 chapters are dealing with Karma Yoga. Mainly, that's the emphasis. 6th chapter is dealing with meditation. The interesting thing is, in all the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, only 1 chapter is dedicated to meditation. And people say, here's my priority, I want to learn meditation. I see. Actually, you have 5 chapters to study before you can get to it. And then 7 to 12 is to do with Bhakti Yoga. And the 12th chapter tells us, gives a comparison answer to the question, which of these are easier? The impersonal, the formless, the abstract, all of this. Which one? There's that one that you have mentioned, and this other one that you have mentioned too, and that is this. We can describe it in summary as this dedication to the form, this devotional attitude, love of God. So this question is, broadly speaking, being asked like this. And the answer is, both those who worship the imperishable, they come to me. But those who worship the personal, the one with form, they also come to me. Now we have an equal footing. But, and here's the but, those who worship that one with form, those who worship me personally, this is the better way. They are mine. Why? I thought you said they were equal. Yes, but this one is easier. You see, it's simpler and it's easier, it's more natural. All paths require renunciation. Renunciation is the key to spiritual life. But in the bhakti yoga, there's no enforced renunciation. Somebody asked me a question in a car, actually. I was being driven to the airport. And they said, my expectation from my guru is that I have to do increased, very intimidating kind of tapasya. And I put it off. I postponed it because I don't think I can do it. So I said, but do you have a personal form of God, a personal ideal, Ishtadevata? Yes, yes. All right, your guru gave you that, and your guru gave you a mantra to go with that. Yes, yes, yes. Fine. Essentially, like all of us, you are probably a bhakti. Yes. Okay. He wasn't quite sure of that. He said, yes, I have deep feelings. When I sing a song, tears come to my mind, to my eyes. Okay, fine. That's something that you can use. Do you realize that in the path of bhakti yoga, there's no tapasya? He was shocked. Are you saying we should not do tapasya? I'm saying when you love God, your love for other things disappears. You don't have to struggle and put in discipline no more than when you, in a human relationship, love somebody and then you find somebody else and you love them and the other love disappears. Swami Vivekananda's example, Ramakrishna's example also. So, what did you give up? When I start loving, my love for chocolate disappears. And we use the same word. Say, oh, I love. I have a loving nature. Very good. What's your dearest love? Oh, chocolate. We use the same word. Or you see those, I've met some people who don't have children. What is your love? Oh, day and night, my whole life is my dog. I see, okay, all right. Then they meet somebody and form a relationship, and the love for the dog is diminished. So attachment to one thing is superseded by attachment to another. And in bhakti yoga, our love for God allows the other little loves to disappear. Attachment to God brings us to a point of automatic detachment from other things. All these other worldly things have gone. The more we intensify that, the less important the other becomes. The more we love God, the less we love the world. We don't have to say, I'm going to do a discipline in order to be disgruntled with this world. Oh, increase your love of God. That's all you have to do. And in a very sweet form, therefore, using our natural capacity to love. In this sweet way, we are tasting the love, the honey, the blissful nature of the divine. And compared to that, the taste of these other things in the world becomes less until it becomes nothing whatsoever. And we realize we cannot love God without loving everything else, because as soon as you see the poem that I quoted, I searched for God everywhere, I never found him. We can extend it. I searched for God in churches, I never saw him. I searched for God in the forest, I never saw him. Search for God here, search for God there, search for God with this teacher and that teacher, never found. Never found God anywhere. Then I searched for God in me, and I found God in me, and I found God everywhere. So once that happens, and this is the whole message of the Upanishads, that Brahman alone exists is the ultimate final message. But Brahman transcends all forms. And how we get to that position is through practice. We can't do a jump there. Some people can, but most so-called normal people will have to make a steady progression toward it. And it's no good if you don't make the progression easy, fun. Yes, fun. Spiritual life should be fun. Spiritual life should be a joy. Because at each movement, of course, initially it may look like a struggle. Initially, it may look like a tapasya, that is, a friction, a heat that is caused by friction going against the grain of what we deem to be normal. So, when we steer our attention in a different way, the attention goes away from something else, and we do it naturally. I may have mentioned so many times, you see if a child is in distress, it fell down and banged its knee. And then we pick the child up and immediately say, oh, look at this, look at the flowers, look at the tree. Immediately the child forgot everything. Gave it a toy to play with, look at this, look at that. The pain is still there, but the attention is not associated with it. And so the child doesn't really feel it. So by steering our attention to something better, that still requires discernment. We still have to make a decision, and we have to insert an intention, and we have to sustain it. It still requires resolve. Everything begins with resolve. And once we've resolved it, and what stimulates the resolution, I should say, is normally pain, a painful situation. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita we are faced with that. The first chapter is a chapter about pain. So right now, I am engaged in many different sorts of conferences all around the COVID virus. And it's quite interesting to see from different parts of the world the level of pain. I had a conference with some people in Finland 2 days back. And they were pointing things out that wouldn't have registered with me. But it boils down to 5 or 6 different types of pain. Pain of feeling isolated, the pain of older people not being able to have a physical contact with their grandchildren. Or the pain of a daughter in some cases, not being in physical contact with your mother who may be sick, not knowing, not having, you can speak on the phone, you can speak like this, you see. But what about hugging somebody? Is there any substitute for it? And then some people have anxiety syndrome because they're worried. When things do get back to so-called normal, will we in any way be able to have that same physical contact, that social connection? So people are in an anxious state. Now, when you steer people's attention towards something and stimulated by pain, pain is a way of forcing you toward it. And the most painful thing that we can have will be death. And the principal mother of all fears is the fear of death, the fear of self-annihilation. Now, supposing you say, don't worry about this form or formlessness and all the rest of it. You must aim for a transcendent position. Most people will say, thank you, no thank you. I don't want self-annihilation. So we can't take the ultimate position first. We have to take it in degrees until somebody understands. And the understanding increases, then we can take it. Since we began, of course, with the first stanza of the Isha Upanishad, it would be useful just to explore just that first stanza. And I'm sorry, everything became late, but thank you all for having the patience to continue hanging in there. And so we probably know by heart the first stanza, Isha Vasham Idam Sarvam Yat Kimcha Jagatyam Jagat. Know that all this, whatever moves in a changing world, whatever is changeful, should be covered by the Lord. And so protect yourself through that detachment. That means that because everything is enveloped by the Lord, therefore, we can find enjoyment in renunciation. Renunciation is the key to it all. So we find joy in renunciation, not sackcloth and ashes. It's funny that we see these pictures of saints and so on that are supposed to inspire us, and they look very dreadfully serious. And some people legitimately ask, what's wrong with this person, And will I have to do that? You see, particularly in some cultures, some religious cultures, we find the artwork is such that pain is glorified. Theologically, Christ hung on the cross, and if we are to follow and imitate Christ, we also have to suffer on the cross. No, we don't have to suffer. We will suffer anyway. Everybody has a little cross to carry. And no one can avoid it. Nobody can avoid physical pain. Even if I tell you, please put all the cold packs on, take steam baths every day, take care of your diet, and more importantly, please elevate the mind at every moment and keep the mind on a wave of positivity to all of that. Despite all of that, in Ramakrishna's language, see, the breakdown of the body or pain or disease is the rent we pay for a body. This body is rented by us. Find your enjoyment in renunciation and don't covet, don't hanker for what does not belong to you. Now it's remarkable how this dualistic approach, verging on pseudo-dualism, that is, verging on qualified dualism or qualified non-dualism, the next kind of broad step upwards. You see, it doesn't say that this Lord sits, because the name Isha, you see, is the one who is a lord, the one who lords it. Like a king or a monarch surveying the creation, if you will. The whole empire is before that entity. So that puts everything at a distance. Is there a connection between that and the world? Yes. This is why this stanza is so important. It says, no, it's not like that. It's not dualism in that sense. Because everything that moves is contrasted with the thing that does not move. That is contrasted with this Lord. And everything is enveloped in it, is pervaded by it, intimately connected with it. And when things move, it's because of it. When things do not move, it's because of it. And for that reason, nothing belongs to you or me. Therefore, we should not waste our energy in coveting something that doesn't belong to us. A starting position for many people complaining of unhappiness in the world, and happiness in their particular condition, is, oh, I wish I had this, I wish I had that, you see. Of course, you can mobilize the forces to get it, but once you've got it, then the next wish comes. It's like the story, you see, of the couple, and they got some kind of magic lamp, and they said, okay, if we rub this, then something like a genie will come out, and we are entitled to 3 wishes. This is a kind of universal story, not just on the Arabian subcontinent. What should we wish for? Now, they both felt they had a difficulty. They both wanted to be more attractive. And so they thought, supposing we have a better nose. So they requested that. There are variations of the story. So supposing we have, a wonderfully shaped nose, they request, therefore, may we have well-shaped noses. Of course, they had their wish because there were noses everywhere. They didn't become very specific about it. First wish gone. So then may you remove these noses, no noses whatsoever, not even the original ones. Third wish, please restore us back to normal. Like that, 3 wishes wasted. So the wish is because we don't have a recognition that all these things do not belong to us. The body doesn't belong to us. Mind doesn't belong to us. Body, mind doesn't belong to us. Our resources don't belong to us. We didn't request to be born with a sun and a moon and live in a month of rhythms and have a mother and father like this and be born in a certain country and so on and so forth. There was no, as far as we know, any direct request for it. There may have been an urge for it somewhere, and it becomes realized. But none of this belongs to us. That's the point. If this statement is true, nothing belongs to us. And therefore, to covet it, to have this endless wishes about it, will disturb the mind. And it will leave us into blinding darkness. Now, there are many religions that have a similar point of view. The invisible always continuing the same, but the visible never the same, is a quote from Plato's Phaedo. So all this that is changeful, this change is recognized by every philosopher. And then you see, the world is steeped in God. It is the household of God. God dwells in the heart of all things. This would be a quotation. And Jagat is a technical term. The universe is a becoming, not a thing. We think it's a fixed thing. It's a series of changeful happenings. So when science starts to explore this changing thing, whose technical term is Jagat, the thing that always changes, they're actually studying Maya. And it's no wonder that the more they study it, the more they find it's inscrutable. The more they study it, the more mysteries come. And in trying to explain something that doesn't work, create a machinery to force it to work, and spend now millions and billions of euros and dollars in supporting something that may really not exactly work. So don't covet, no need for greed. When we realize that God inhabits each object, when we rise to that cosmic consciousness, covetousness disappears. And this is a paraphrase on this from Palgrave's Golden Treasury, Wotton's paraphrase of Horace. This man is freed from servile bonds of hope to rise or fear to fall. Lord of himself, though not of lands, and having nothing, yet hath it all. Very beautiful. So this is why Mahatma Gandhi values this particular stanza of this Isha Upanishad more than anything else, even though it doesn't seem to tally with the thrust of the Upanishads, namely, Brahman alone exists, and its discovery is discovering this Atman or self in you. So it's a good starting point. Now we can study this further, but all these concepts that we have later in the Bhagavad Gita are here in this Isha Upanishad as well. So for example, we find people declaring, for the first time we find in the Bhagavad Gita the concept of Karma Yoga. But clearly the second stanza of this Isha Upanishad tells us about it. If you wish to live for 100 years, supposing, I have no wish for it, by the way, if you wish to live for 100 years, then make sure that you are not attached to the fruits of your action. That's the purport of this. Kurvan evaha karmani chijivishet shatam samaha. Always performing works here. One should wish to live 100 years. If you live thus as a person, there's no way other than this by which karman, deeds, adhere to you, or the effects of them adhere to you. The difficulty about action is all the effects come to you. And most of the effects, if not handled in the proper way, are negative and impact negatively on your life and your life after. I had a curious text from an anonymous person for our purposes today, being very distressed. You see, her husband, obviously her husband's father passed away some time ago. Now he being the eldest in the family, it's his duty to make sure that his sisters get married. Because at one point in society, if the eldest son did not fulfill this responsibility, it will be difficult for him in his next life. That was what he understood. But why should it be difficult? If you can't do your responsibilities here, if you can't handle it here, you can handle it in the next life. Unless you're aiming for absolute moksha. But to aim for absolute moksha will require intensive practice. And that very often means that you may have to renounce some things that you're not ready to do. You may have to detach from some things that you may not be in a position to do or ready to do. And your previous activity has put you in your present circumstance. So what you do now will determine what your circumstance is in the future. So there may have been room for that kind of social standard that every woman in India should marry. Society may have required it in those days. But you see, it carries on in modern times. These superstitions kind of creep in. Your anxiety about it will not do you any favors, either here or hereafter. And so do what you can, and then leave it. That's all you can do. So if you do that without anxiety, all actions detached from the fruits of the actions is called karma yoga. All of our actions will have consequences. And so to circumvent negative consequences for us, then we do it without attachment to the fruits. In other words, do it with full concentration and attention in this present moment, enjoying this activity now. Even the activities that in the future, when we plan, we think, oh, I don't like these activities. These activities may be boring, tedious, or they're not my most favorite activity. Therefore, I'll leave it to the last. You see, there are two approaches. When I was smaller, that is, young, younger, I should say. So my brother and I, neither of us liked these, what we call the spawn of Satan, what you call Brussels sprouts. Some people like them, of course. So we had different tactics. My tactic was, I'll eat everything and leave that till last. His tactic was, eat that first, get out of the way, and then enjoy the rest. I'm not sure which tactic was better. So we do that with tasks, you see. The unpleasant tasks we don't want to tackle. We tend to say, okay, let me tackle the better things first, things I like first. But then you see, if you take something as a unit activity, put all your concentration in and understand two things. That this concentration will actually not create an anxiety for me because I'm detached from the fruits. And I'm enjoying the process of putting all my energy into it. And once I do that, it becomes pleasant for me. The second aspect to this is that it becomes more of an efficient activity. And then there's a third aspect to that. If I put love of God in there, it becomes sweeter. So all of these things, in summary, therefore, are valuable. And this was an answer to a question. So the question originally was, is there any contradiction between thinking of God or God with form, God as formless, and God transcending form? The formless tends to be impersonal, but need not necessarily be. but the most personal will be with form and evokes a sense of steering all our emotions toward love of God. The transcendent aspect we don't have to worry about because it happens by itself. All right.
Thank you, Swamiji. Just in relation to the clubbing of the chapters of Gita, so 1 to 5 was Karma Yoga, 6 was Dhyana Yoga, 7
are to do with Jnana Yoga.
So 13 to 17 all, or 13 exclusively Jnana Yoga, and then the rest was with
13 to 18 are all to do with Jnana Yoga. Yeah. So we have 4 yogas represented here in this Bhagavad Gita, because first 5 chapters are Karma Yoga, 6th chapter is Jnana Yoga, meditation, and the reason why it's put at the end of Karma Yoga chapter is because you cannot do the meditation without the karma. The classical, if you want to study meditation, everybody in every system will refer to Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Even in the Vedanta Sara that I quoted from either last week or the week before, a 14th century work of this current era, you'll find when it comes to meditation and practice, Patanjali Yoga Sutras is really being used. This is quoting the area of personal discipline, that is the area of controls, the area of moral training, and then specific purification activities. And then, of course, it goes on to other things such as posture, meditation posture, breathing, and so on and so forth, all of these things. And then finally, pratyahara, withdrawal of the attention, and ultimately what is being called yoga nidra for some. And then ultimately it is dharana, taking all your energy, mental energy, and beaming it in one direction, sustaining that like oil being poured from one vessel continuously to another is called meditation. Samadhi, don't even worry about it. It happens by itself. So this is the various training. And so most of it comes under, before you get to that meditation, that internal process, is the karma yoga that has to be done. So the 6th chapter is karma yoga. And then, so 2 yogas now. 2 yogas down, all right, 2 more to go. So the 3rd section will deal with bhakti yoga, and the 4th section will deal with jnana yoga. The 4 yogas that Swami Vivekananda emphasizes is not the invention of Swami Vivekananda or Ramakrishna or any of these, because truth is always truth, it's eternally there, eternally so. But different things are emphasized in different eras. In the era of the Upanishad, this Bhakti Yoga was not emphasized until we get to the Svetashvatara Upanishad, and then we find it emphasized. So even in the Upanishads, we find scope for all of these things. But the ancient rishis, their principal method was Jnana Yoga. In this day and age, with so many different distractions, where exercise, including thumb exercises, is important. Walk down the street, somebody's doing thumb exercises on their telephone, you see. So, in this day and age, we have to rally around our feelings to catch up with the principles. Spiritual life is rallying the emotions and making them catch up with the principles, which are all intellectual. Practical for some. So just in passing, I may say, yesterday was interesting because there was a small discussion amongst the yoga teachers. And I was pointing out that many people today will want to follow Ramana Maharshi. But it's only because they don't understand. You see, it's impossible for most people to follow Ramana Maharshi. So while we love Ramana Maharshi dearly, while he is the most profound sage, while he may have attained moksha or close to, still to follow his method of Jnana Yoga, his method of internal inquiry, the method that is followed by those great sages of the Upanishadic era, that would be very difficult, because what is required is imitation. If you want to follow a sage, you have to imitate them. That's why we have something called imitation of Christ. Christians are expected to imitate Christ. Followers of Ramakrishna can imitate Ramakrishna as much as possible. See, as much as possible, as much as humanly possible. Now, to follow Ramana Maharshi, then here's what you have to do. You have to take all your clothing away, just the bare minimum, climb up a mountain, find a cave somewhere, and stay in there for years and years together, and make this single inquiry, this investigation by yourself in an antisocial way. Who am I? And if I did a survey here and asked how many people would be prepared to do this, I think there'd be people who say, I'm sorry, I have to do the ironing, I have to cook the food, I have to look after the children, and something will come up, you see. So we have to be extremely practical. Spiritual life is a practical life. It is not pie in the sky. And so we have to use what we have. What we have is tremendous. What we have is, we have the capacity for creative thinking. We have the capacity for imagination, art, and culture. We have the capacity to recreate beautiful scenes from our store of memories and bring them out. Whenever we see on the horizon some thought which has a characteristic of egocentricity or blindness, Vishnu Upanishad mentions this very clearly. He mentions those who are blind. Blind, not physically blind, but using it as a simile for ignorance. These are all things which will give you pain. Understanding that, noticing in that, and being distant from it, at least theoretically, and also to understand that it is true. We can witness that, and we can use the next moment to insert something of our own choice. Putting that into a series for 8 seconds, 16 seconds, like that, we can saturate the mind with truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony and all these things, transforming forever our habit level. And what will happen is full of sattva. We're now studying the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And in that 14th chapter, it tells you somebody who is saturated, as it were, with sattva. What are the signs? Well, you can see it beaming through their face and eyes. Their body is luminous. So like that, you see, we can see the characteristics of all these things. People who are attached in a greedy way. People who are greedy will be attached to rajas. But it'll give them pain. Their intention was, may I be happy. But they just followed the wrong formula. The saving thing for them is to understand my desire for happiness is because my nature is blissful. If it wasn't blissful, why would I seek for happiness? I'm only seeking my own internal nature by seeking happiness. My nature being blissful, that's what I'm looking for. I want to get back to my own entity. So thank you for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we can meet again, of course, at if you're connected with the information, at 6:45 this evening. We have the Aarti here. And even before that, at 5:30, we have Swami Vimokshananda's talk on Gospel of Ramakrishna. These are very valuable talks with people from all over the world attending, from Singapore, from South Africa, from India, even from Ireland. And so these are worthwhile if you have the interest. All right, and then Tuesday, of course, we have Srimad Bhagavad Gita, at 8 o'clock, preceded by guided meditation from 7 to 7:30. And then, of course, we have these daily thoughts, which pose questions, and I'm impressed with your answers. There are no wrong answers to these questions, by the way. And then normally we'd have an evening reflection, but not Saturdays and Sundays. And we're not sure if we'll continue that, but we'll experiment with it this week. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace be unto you.